Jake Morrison sat in the back row of the military history classroom, his eyes fixed on the desk in front of him. Around him, 200 cadets from dozens of different worlds filled the large hall. The Zephyrians were easy to spot with their tall gray bodies and forearms. The Vortani looked like walking crystals that caught the light from every angle. The Keplers moved fast even when sitting still, their green skin shifting colors with their emotions. Jake was human. Only 3 humans were in his class, and that made him feel alone most days. He kept his head down and spoke only when teachers asked him direct questions. Most of the other cadets ignored him, which was exactly what he wanted. Professor Veltar walked to the front of the room. The old Zephyrian had scars across his gray face from battles fought long ago. His forearms moved as he talked, gesturing to make his points clear. Today, like many days before, they would watch war footage from the recent past. "Today we study the Dominion War," Professor Veltar said in his deep voice. "This war ended only 5 years ago. Many of your parents fought in this conflict. Some did not come home. The room became quiet. Even the Keplers stopped their constant small movements." Jake felt his hands start to shake under his desk. He gripped them together and forced himself to breathe slowly. "We will watch footage from the Battle of Creo 7, the professor continued. "This mining world became the site of one of the most famous last stands in galactic history. A small human unit held off an entire Dominion fleet for 3 days. They saved over 50,000 civilians." Jake's stomach twisted. He wanted to leave, but getting up now would draw attention. He had to stay and watch. He had to pretend this was new to him. The lights dimmed and the large screen at the front came to life. Smoke and fire filled the image. The sound of explosions and weapon fire echoed through the room. Jake could smell the burning metal and taste the dust in the air, even though he knew it was just his memory playing tricks on him. The footage showed a mining facility under attack. Massive Dominion ships hung in the sky like dark clouds. Their weapons turned buildings into rubble with each blast. In the middle of the chaos, small figures in combat gear moved between the ruins. "Watch carefully," Professor Veltar said. "Notice how the human defenders use the terrain. See how they turn every piece of debris into cover or a weapon." A Zephyrian cadet named Gorthak raised one of his 4 hands. "Professor, why did the humans not retreat?" "They were greatly outnumbered." "An excellent question," the professor replied. "Humans have a saying about this. They call it holding the line. They will often fight impossible battles to protect others." On the screen, the camera followed a single human soldier. The person's face was hidden behind a combat helmet and breathing mask. Smoke and dirt covered the armor, making it hard to see details. But Jake knew that soldier. He knew every move, every decision, every desperate moment. The soldier on screen moved with purpose through the burning facility. Dominion wore mechs, giant metal machines with powerful weapons, stomped through the ruins looking for targets. The human soldier seemed tiny next to them, like a mouse facing lions, but the mouse had teeth. The soldier planted explosive charges on support beams near 3 war mechs. The explosions brought down part of a building, crushing 2 of the machines and trapping the 3rd. Jake watched himself do this 5 years ago, but to everyone else in the room it was just amazing footage of human tactical thinking. "Incredible," whispered Zix, Jake's Kepler roommate. His skin had turned bright orange with excitement. How did the human know exactly where to place those charges? Jake shifted in his seat. "Lucky guess?" he said quietly. Several alien cadets turned to look at him. Jake was one of only 3 humans in the class, so his opinions about human military tactics carried weight with the others. A Vortani cadet named Crystalline spoke in her musical voice. "Jake Morrison, your species fascinates us. This human in the footage shows capabilities beyond normal military training." "Do all humans fight this way?" Jake felt heat rise to his face. "I wouldn't know. I'm from a farming colony. We don't fight much there." This was his cover story. Jake Morrison from New Montana, a quiet agricultural world. His official record said he grew corn and wheat before joining the academy. It was all lies, but lies that kept him safe. On the screen, the footage continued. The lone human soldier now faced impossible odds. 6 more war mechs surrounded the area. Dominion soldiers in their black armor moved in from all sides. Any normal person would surrender or die trying to run. The soldier did neither. Jake watched himself use a damaged fuel line to create a fire trap. The explosion took out 2 more mechs and scattered the enemy soldiers. Then came the part that made Jake famous across the galaxy, though no one knew his real name or face. The soldier grabbed a damaged mech's weapon system and somehow got it working again. Using the enemy's own gun, the human destroyed the remaining mechs one by one. It took skill, courage, and more luck than anyone deserved. The classroom erupted in amazed whispers. Alien cadets spoke in dozens of languages, but Jake could hear the excitement in all of them. They were watching something they thought was impossible. This footage has been studied by military academies across the galaxy, Professor Veltar explained. The tactical decisions shown here are now taught as examples of adaptive thinking under extreme pressure. A Zephyrian cadet asked, "Professor, who was this human soldier? Surely such a warrior became famous after this battle." Professor Veltar's expression became sad. According to military records, Sergeant Jacob Morrison was the only survivor of his unit. He died 3 days later when his evacuation transport was destroyed by enemy fire. His body was never recovered. Jake felt like someone had hit him in the chest. Hearing his own death announced in a classroom full of cadets who admired his work was surreal and painful. He was sitting right here alive, but the galaxy thought Jacob Morrison was dead, and Jake Morrison, his new identity, was just a farm boy who knew nothing about war. "That's terrible," said Lisa Park, one of the other human cadets. She was an engineering student, smart and kind. Jake liked her, but he could never tell her the truth about himself. The footage ended with the lone soldier standing in the ruins, looking up at the sky as civilian evacuation ships escaped to safety. The image froze there, showing an anonymous figure who had saved 50,000 lives and become a legend. This battle inspired songs, stories, and tactical manuals, Professor Veltar said as the lights came back up. The human capacity for self-sacrifice and tactical innovation under pressure remains unmatched in galactic military history. Jake felt sick. Every word of praise felt like a weight on his shoulders. These cadets, his friends, were talking about him like he was some kind of perfect hero. They didn't know about the nightmares, the guilt, the fear that had driven him to fake his own death and start over. The evacuation ships made it to safety because of this one human's actions, the professor continued. Sometimes one person can change the course of history. Zix's skin shifted to a deep blue, which meant he was thinking hard. Jake Morrison, as a human, what do you think drove this soldier to fight so hard? All eyes turned to Jake. He wanted to disappear, to melt into his chair and never answer another question about human nature or military tactics. But he had to say something. Maybe he was just scared, Jake said quietly. Maybe he didn't feel brave at all. Maybe he just couldn't live with himself if he didn't try to save those people. The room was quiet for a moment. Then Zix nodded slowly. Fear can be a powerful motivator for good. Indeed, said Professor Veltar. True courage is not the absence of fear, but action in spite of fear. Jake excused himself from class, claiming he felt sick. As he walked through the corridors of the academy, he could still hear the explosions from the footage echoing in his mind. He had thought coming here would help him forget the war. Instead, he was forced to watch his greatest moment played over and over again. Praised by people who would never know they were sitting next to the hero they admired. He was Jacob Morrison, the legendary soldier of Creo 7. He was also Jake Morrison, the quiet cadet who just wanted to be left alone. Keeping these two identities separate was getting harder every day. Jake woke up screaming again. His roommate Zix jumped from his bed, skin flashing bright red with alarm. The Kepler moved quickly to Jake's side, his large eyes filled with worry. Jake Morrison, you have another bad dream, Zix said in his careful English. Keplers learned languages fast, but they still spoke with odd word order sometimes. This makes 7 nights this week. Jake sat up, sweat covering his face and chest. His hands shook as he reached for the water bottle beside his bed. Sorry, Zix, I didn't mean to wake you up again. No sorry needed, Zix replied, his skin shifting to a calmer green color. But perhaps you should speak to medical officer. These dreams seem very bad. No, Jake said quickly. Too quickly. Going to medical would mean questions, records, maybe even scans of his brain. They might find out who he really was. They're just stress dreams. Academy life is harder than farm work. This was another lie to add to the growing pile. Farm work had never given him nightmares about burning buildings and screaming civilians. Only war did that. Zix looked at him for a long moment. Keplers were good at reading emotions, even human ones. But he didn't push the issue. If you say so, friend Jake Morrison. The next morning, Jake dragged himself to combat training class. Instructor Thane, a massive Zephyrian with scars covering all four arms, had them practice urban warfare tactics. Jake tried to stay in the middle of the group. Not too good, but not too bad. Just average. But when the practice scenario began, his body moved without thinking. The training area was set up to look like a damaged city, much like the mining facility on Krios 7. Other cadets stumbled over debris and made noise. Jake moved like smoke between the fake buildings. Morrison, Instructor Thane called out, "Where did you learn to move like that?" Jake froze. He had been too careful for weeks, but something about the training area had triggered his old instincts. "I watched a lot of training videos back home," he said. "Wanted to be ready for academy." The instructor's four eyes studied Jake carefully. "Those must have been very good videos. Show the others that movement pattern." For the next hour, Jake had to demonstrate techniques he had learned during real battles. He told the other cadets he had practiced them on his family's farm, using barn and storage buildings as cover. More lies. But the other cadets believed him and tried to copy his movements. Lisa Park watched him more carefully than the others. She was smart, maybe too smart. During break time, she approached him. "You're really good at this stuff," she said. "For a farm boy, I mean." "Thanks," Jake replied, trying to sound casual. "I had a lot of time to practice." "What kind of farm did your family have?" Lisa asked. "I grew up on an agricultural colony, too. New Terra in the Outer Ring." Jake's stomach dropped. He had memorized basic facts about New Montana. But if Lisa knew about farming colonies, she might ask questions he couldn't answer. "Grain, mostly," he said. "Corn, wheat, some vegetables? Nothing fancy." "That's strange," Lisa said, tilting her head. "New Montana specializes in livestock, not grain crops. My cousin lives there. She raises cattle for the military." Jake felt cold sweat on his back. "Different regions, maybe? It's a big planet." Lisa nodded, but her eyes said she wasn't completely satisfied with his answer. "Maybe. Well, see you later, Jake." As she walked away, Jake realized his cover story was starting to crack. He would have to be more careful. That afternoon brought advanced military strategy class with Professor Keth, a Vortani whose crystal body sparkled when she was excited about a lesson. Today they were studying defensive tactics. "Cadet Morrison," she said suddenly, "your species has a reputation for creative problem-solving under pressure. How would humans defend against a superior force?" Jake's mouth went dry. These questions about human military thinking were becoming more common. His classmates saw him as a window into understanding how humans fought. "Use the environment, I guess," Jake said. "Turn the enemy's strength against them." "Explain, please," Professor Keth said, her crystal face reflecting rainbow colors of interest. Without thinking, Jake began describing tactics he had actually used. If the enemy has big machines, find ways to trap them or make them fight in spaces too small for their weapons. Use their own equipment against them when possible. Make every piece of debris into a weapon or shield. The class listened with fascination. These were exactly the tactics shown in the famous Krios 7 footage. Jake realized too late that he was describing his own battle strategies in too much detail. "Remarkable," Professor Keth said. "You describe techniques very similar to those used by the legendary defender of Krios 7. Have you studied that battle extensively?" "Everyone has seen the footage," Jake said weakly. "It's pretty famous." After class, Jake hurried toward his dormitory, but Commander Elena Vasquez stepped into his path. She was the Academy's human liaison officer, a stern woman in her 40s with gray streaks in her dark hair. Jake had avoided her as much as possible since arriving at the Academy. "Cadet Morrison," she said. "Walk with me." It wasn't really a request. Jake fell into step beside her as they walked through the Academy corridors. Other cadets moved out of their way, showing respect for the commander's rank. "You've been having nightmares," Commander Vasquez said. "Your roommate filed a wellness report. He's worried about you." "Just adjustment stress," Jake said. "Academy life is different from farm life." "I'm sure it is," the commander replied. "Tell me about New Montana. I've never been there myself." Jake repeated his practice story about growing grain crops and preparing for academy life. Commander Vasquez listened without comment, but her eyes watched his face carefully. "Interesting," she said when he finished. "My military records show New Montana as primarily a livestock world. Cattle ranches, not grain farms." Jake's heart started beating faster. Maybe the records are old. Planets change their industries sometimes. "Maybe," Commander Vasquez said. Or maybe someone hasn't done their homework on their cover story. They stopped walking. Jake felt like the walls were closing in around him. Did she know? How much did she suspect? I don't know what you mean, Jake said. Of course you don't, the commander replied. But Jake, if you ever need to talk to someone about things from your past, my door is always open. Sometimes carrying secrets can be harder than carrying wounds. She walked away, leaving Jake standing alone in the corridor. Her words felt like a warning and an offer at the same time. But Jake couldn't risk trusting anyone with the truth. That evening, Jake sat in the Academy's memorial garden. Stone tablets listed the names of graduates who had died in various wars. He found the section for the Dominion War and ran his finger along the carved letters. His own name was there, Jacob Morrison, killed in action Creos 7. Sad, isn't it? Lisa's voice came from behind him. All those young people who died fighting. Jake turned around. Lisa walked toward him carrying 2 cups of hot chocolate from the cafeteria. She offered him one. Thanks, Jake said, accepting the warm cup. Lisa sat beside him on the stone bench. My brother's name is on one of these walls. He died during the siege of Helios Station. I'm sorry, Jake said, and he meant it. He was a good soldier, Lisa continued. But he was also scared. He wrote letters home about the nightmares, about how hard it was to sleep after battles. His letter sounded a lot like your dreams. Jake almost dropped his cup. What do you mean? You talk in your sleep sometimes, Lisa said gently. Zix mentioned it to me because he's worried. You say things about explosions, about people trapped in buildings, about evacuation ships. Those don't sound like farm nightmares. Jake stared at the memorial tablets. His secret was unraveling thread by thread. First the instructor noticing his combat skills. Then Commander Vasquez questioning his background. Now Lisa connecting his nightmares to battle trauma. Maybe I watch too many war movies, Jake said weakly. Lisa was quiet for a long moment. When she spoke again, her voice was very soft. Jake, I don't know what you're hiding, but I want you to know that some of us care about you. Not because you're mysterious, but because you're our friend. If you ever want to talk about whatever is really bothering you, I'm here. Jake looked at her kind face in the garden's soft lighting. Part of him wanted to tell her everything, to finally share the weight he had been carrying alone. But the risk was too great. If people knew who he really was, they would expect him to be the hero from the footage. They would want him to be brave and strong and sure of himself. He was none of those things. He was just a scared young man who had survived something terrible and couldn't figure out how to live with what he had done. Thanks, Lisa, he said. But I'm okay, really. Another lie. But lies were all he had left to protect the small, quiet life he had built at the academy. He just hoped they would hold together long enough for him to figure out what came next. As they sat in the memorial garden, Jake wondered if other names on these walls belonged to people who had also carried secrets too heavy for their hearts. The stone was cold under his fingers, but somehow that felt right. Cold stone for cold truths that couldn't be shared. Commander Elena Vasquez sat in her office late at night, staring at her computer screen. The official records for Cadet Jake Morrison glowed in the blue light. On paper, everything looked normal. Birth certificate from New Montana. School records from a small farming community. Medical files showing routine checkups and vaccinations. But Elena had fought in 3 wars before becoming an academy instructor. She knew how to spot lies, and Jake Morrison's entire life story felt like a carefully built fake identity. She opened another window on her computer and typed in search terms she wasn't supposed to use. The military database required special permission to access classified files, but Elena had that permission. As human liaison officer, she needed to check backgrounds of human cadets for security reasons. What she found made her hands shake. The database showed another Jake Morrison, but this one had died 5 years ago on a transport ship leaving the Creos 7 system. According to the records, he had been the only survivor of a unit that held off an entire Dominion fleet. The same unit from the famous footage they showed in military history classes, but the dead Jake Morrison's first name was listed as Jacob, not Jake. And his service record showed he had been a sergeant, not a farm boy. Elena cross-referenced the medical records and found something that made her heart race. The blood type matched. The height and weight matched. Even the small scar on the left hand from a childhood accident was mentioned in both files. Jake Morrison, the cadet, and Jacob Morrison, the dead war hero, were the same person. Elena leaned back in her chair, mind spinning. How was this possible? Why would a war hero fake his own death and enroll in the academy as a cadet? What was he running from? She thought about Jake's nightmares, his combat skills, his detailed knowledge of military tactics. It all made sense now. He wasn't a farm boy who had studied war footage. He was the soldier in the war footage. Elena knew she should report this immediately to Academy security. But something held her back. The young man she had watched in classes and hallways didn't look like someone trying to hurt anyone. He looked like someone trying to hide from pain. Meanwhile, Jake was facing his own crisis during advanced combat simulation training. Instructor Thane had designed a scenario that was supposed to test how cadets handled impossible situations. The simulation placed them in a damaged mining facility under attack by superior enemy forces. Jake's team consisted of himself, Zix, Lisa, and 3 other alien cadets. They were given basic equipment and told to hold their position for as long as possible, while civilian evacuation ships escaped. The moment the simulation began, Jake felt ice in his veins. The virtual environment looked exactly like Creo 7. The same type of mining equipment, the same layout of buildings, even the same red dust that got into everything. Other cadet teams had tried this simulation before them. Most lasted less than 10 minutes before being overwhelmed by enemy forces. The best team had managed 15 minutes, which instructors considered excellent. Jake's team lasted 43 minutes and won the scenario completely. Jake couldn't help himself. When he saw the virtual Dominion war mechs approaching, his training took over. He positioned his teammates exactly like real soldiers, using terrain advantages he had learned through blood and desperation. He told Zix to create a distraction on the left flank, while Lisa set up engineering traps on the right. He sent the other cadets to high positions where they could spot enemy movements. Then Jake himself moved through the simulated facility like he owned it, placing explosives and setting ambushes with the precision of someone who had done this for real. The other cadets followed his orders without question. Even though Jake was just another cadet officially, something in his voice made them trust his tactical decisions completely. When the simulation ended with their total victory, the training room fell silent. Instructor Thane stared at the results on his screen, then looked at Jake with new eyes. "Morrison," the instructor said slowly, "where exactly did you learn those tactics?" Jake realized he had made a terrible mistake. He had used the exact same strategies from Creo 7, down to the smallest details. Anyone who studied that battle would recognize the patterns. "I guess I got lucky," Jake said, but his voice sounded weak even to himself. "Lucky," Instructor Thane repeated. "You just executed a perfect recreation of the defensive strategies used in the Battle of Creo 7. Strategies that military academies across the galaxy study as examples of tactical genius." The other cadets looked at Jake with amazement and confusion. Zix's skin had turned bright yellow, which meant he was very surprised and thinking hard. "Cadet Morrison," Instructor Thane continued, "I think we need to have a conversation after class." Jake felt panic rising in his chest. He nodded and tried to look calm, but inside he was screaming. His secret was coming apart, piece by piece. After the other cadets left, Instructor Thane closed the training room door. He was a big Zephyrian with 4 powerful arms, but his voice was gentle when he spoke. "I fought in the Dominion War," Thane said. "I was there when we received reports about Creo 7. Every military officer in the galaxy studied those tactics afterward. What you just did in simulation was not luck or good training videos. That was real combat experience." Jake said nothing. What could he say that wouldn't make things worse? "I don't know who you really are," Thane continued. "But I know you're not a farm boy from New Montana. Farm boys don't move like ghosts through combat zones. Farm boys don't position teams like veteran sergeants. Farm boys don't use explosives like they've been handling them for years." Jake looked at the floor. His hands were shaking again. "I'm not going to turn you in," Thane said, surprising Jake. "Not yet, but you need to understand that secrets have a way of coming out, especially secrets this big. Other people are starting to notice things about you too." That evening, Jake couldn't eat dinner. He sat in the cafeteria staring at his food while other cadets talked around him. Lisa sat across from him, watching his face with concern. "You look terrible," she said. "What happened in combat training today?" "Nothing," Jake said automatically. "Just tired." "Zix told me you were amazing in the simulation," Lisa said. "He said you moved like you had fought that exact battle before." His exact words were, "Jake Morrison fights like he knows secrets of war." Jake's stomach twisted. Even his closest friend was starting to put pieces together. Maybe I'm just naturally good at this stuff, Jake said. Lisa leaned forward. Jake, I've been thinking about our conversation in the memorial garden. About your nightmares and the things you say when you sleep. I did some research in the library about battle trauma and post-war stress symptoms. Jake felt cold all over. Lisa, please don't. The symptoms match exactly, Lisa continued. The nightmares, the detailed combat knowledge, the way you sometimes zone out when people talk about the war. These aren't things someone gets from watching videos or growing up on a farm. You don't know what you're talking about, Jake said, but his voice cracked. I think I do, Lisa said softly. I think you were actually in the war, Jake. I don't know how or why you're here pretending to be a cadet, but I think you're a veteran trying to start over. Jake stood up quickly, his chair scraping loudly against the floor. Other cadets turned to look at them. I have to go, Jake said. He left the cafeteria and walked quickly toward the dormitory, but Lisa followed him. Jake, wait, she called. I'm not trying to expose you. I just want to help. Jake turned around in the empty hallway. Lisa stood a few feet away, her face full of kindness and worry. You can't help me, Jake said. Nobody can help me. Just leave me alone, please. Why? Lisa asked. What are you so afraid of? Jake looked at this good person who wanted to help him, and for a moment he almost told her everything. About Jacob Morrison, about Creo 7, about the 50,000 people he had saved and the nightmares that haunted him every night. But then he remembered what would happen if people knew the truth. They would expect him to be a hero again. They would want him to be strong and brave and perfect. They wouldn't understand that heroes could be broken too. Just forget about me, Lisa, Jake said. Forget about all of this. He walked away, leaving Lisa standing alone in the hallway. Behind him, he could hear her call his name one more time, but he didn't turn around. That night, Jake lay awake staring at the ceiling. Zix was sleeping quietly in the next bed, his skin the pale blue color it turned during dreams. Outside their window, the lights of the academy created shadows on the walls. Jake knew his time was running out. Too many people were asking too many questions. Soon someone would put all the pieces together and discover that the quiet farm boy in their classes was really the legendary defender of Creo 7. He wondered if he should run away before that happened, disappear again, create another fake identity, find another place to hide from his past. But as he looked around the small dormitory room he shared with Zix, Jake realized he didn't want to run anymore. For the first time in 5 years, he had friends who cared about him. He had a place where he belonged, even if it was built on lies. Maybe it was time to stop running. Maybe it was time to face the truth, no matter how much it scared him. Jake was walking to his morning classes when Commander Vasquez appeared beside him in the hallway. She didn't say anything, just matched his pace and walked with him. Other cadets moved out of their way, showing respect for the commander's rank. We need to talk, she said quietly. My office now. Jake's stomach dropped, but he nodded. He followed Commander Vasquez through the academy corridors, past classrooms full of alien cadets learning about galactic history and military tactics. Jake wondered if this would be the last time he walked these halls as a student. Commander Vasquez's office was small but neat. Military awards covered one wall, and her desk was covered with reports about human cadets. She gestured for Jake to sit in the chair across from her desk, then closed the door. I know who you are, she said without introduction. Jake felt like all the air had been sucked out of the room. I don't know what you mean. Commander Vasquez turned her computer screen toward him. Jake's own face stared back at him from a military file. But this wasn't Jake Morrison, the cadet. This was Sergeant Jacob Morrison, hero of Creo 7, officially listed as killed in action 5 years ago. Your real name is Jacob Morrison, Commander Vasquez said. You were the sole survivor of Delta Squad 3rd Infantry Division. You held off an entire Dominion fleet for 3 days and saved 50,000 civilian lives. You were supposed to be dead. Jake stared at the screen, seeing his younger self in military uniform. That person looked so confident, so sure of himself. Jake barely remembered feeling that way. How did you find out? Jake asked quietly. Medical records don't lie, Commander Vasquez replied. Blood type, height, weight, even that small scar on your left hand from when you were 7 years old. Everything matches. The only difference is that Jacob Morrison was declared dead, and Jake Morrison appeared at this academy a year later. Jake said nothing. What was the point of lying now? The question is why, Commander Vasquez continued. Why would a war hero fake his death and enroll as a cadet? What are you running from? Jake looked out the window at alien cadets practicing formations on the training field. I'm not running from anything. I'm running to something. A normal life. Normal life, Commander Vasquez repeated. You threw away medals, honor, and a military career to pretend you're a farm boy? You don't understand, Jake said, finally looking at her. Everyone thinks what I did on Creo 7 was heroic. They made songs about it. They teach it in classes. But I was terrified the whole time. I made mistakes that got good people killed. I only survived because I was lucky. Commander Vasquez leaned back in her chair. Jake, terror doesn't make someone less heroic. It makes them more heroic. Anyone can be brave when they're not scared. I don't feel like a hero, Jake said. I feel like a fraud. Everyone expects me to be strong and fearless and perfect. But I have nightmares every night. I jump when doors slam. I can't even watch the footage of my own battle without wanting to throw up. That's called trauma, Commander Vasquez said gently. It's normal for soldiers who've been through what you experienced. There's no shame in it. Jake shook his head. There's shame in lying about who you are. There's shame in letting people think you're dead while you hide from your responsibilities. What responsibilities? Commander Vasquez asked. The war is over. Your military service was completed when that transport ship exploded. Officially, you died doing your duty. But I didn't die, Jake said. I crawled out of that wreck and spent 3 months in a medical facility that was too remote to send proper reports. By the time I was healthy enough to contact command, they had already declared me dead and given me a funeral. It seemed easier to stay dead. Commander Vasquez studied his face. Easier for who? For everyone, Jake replied. Heroes are supposed to be perfect. They're not supposed to be broken 22-year-old kids who shake when they hear loud noises. Jake, listen to me carefully, Commander Vasquez said. You have committed identity fraud and desertion. Those are serious military crimes. I should arrest you right now and send you to court-martial. Jake felt numb. He had known this day would come eventually. I understand. But I'm not going to do that, Commander Vasquez continued. Not yet. I'm going to give you a choice. You can voluntarily reveal your identity and return to active duty with counseling and support, or you can face military tribunal and possible prison time. How long do I have to decide? Jake asked. 24 hours, Commander Vasquez said. Think carefully, Jake. Running away from your problems hasn't solved them. Maybe it's time to face them with help instead of facing them alone. Jake left her office feeling like he was walking underwater. Everything seemed distant and unreal. He went through his classes automatically, not really hearing what the instructors said. During lunch, Zix noticed something was wrong. Friend Jake Morrison, you look very sad today, Zix said, his skin shifting to worried purple colors. Did something bad happen? Maybe, Jake said. I might have to leave the academy soon. Leave? Zix's skin flashed bright red with alarm. Why, did you fail a class? Humans are not supposed to fail classes easily. Jake almost smiled at his friend's concern. It's complicated, Zix. I might have to go back home. To the farm? Lisa asked, sitting down at their table with her lunch tray. Is everything okay with your family? Jake looked at Lisa's kind face and Zix's worried expression. These people cared about him, and he had been lying to them every day for months. They deserved better than that. I need to tell you both something, Jake said, but not here. Can you meet me in the memorial garden after classes? That afternoon, Jake sat on the stone bench where he had talked with Lisa before. She and Zix arrived together, both looking concerned. Jake had been thinking about what to say, but now that the moment was here, he didn't know how to begin. I haven't been honest with you, Jake said finally, about who I am or where I come from. We know you're hiding something, Lisa said gently. We just want to help. Jake took a deep breath. My real name is Jacob Morrison. I was a soldier in the Dominion War. I'm the person from the footage we watched in Professor Veltar's class. Zix's skin went completely white, which Jake had never seen before. Lisa's mouth opened in shock. You're the hero of Creo 7? Lisa whispered. I'm the survivor of Creo 7, Jake corrected, the only one left alive from my unit. Everyone thinks I died in the evacuation, but I survived. I've been hiding here for a year, pretending to be someone else. Zix's skin slowly shifted from white to deep blue as he processed this information. You saved 50,000 people. You are famous across the galaxy. I'm also a deserter and a fraud, Jake said. Commander Vasquez figured out who I am. She's giving me 24 hours to decide whether to turn myself in or face court-martial. Lisa reached over and took his hand. Jake, why didn't you tell us? We're your friends. Because I wanted you to like Jake Morrison the farm boy, not worship Jacob Morrison the war hero, Jake said. I wanted normal friendships with people who didn't expect me to be perfect all the time. You think we would treat you differently? Zix asked, his skin shifting to gentle green. You think we care about your famous name more than your friendship? Don't you? Jake asked. Lisa squeezed his hand. Jake, you're the same person who helps me with my engineering homework. You're the same person who taught Zix how to play human card games. You're the same person who sits with lonely cadets at lunch so they don't eat alone. That's who you are, not some battle footage from 5 years ago. But I lied to you, Jake said, about everything. You protected yourself, Lisa said, after going through something terrible. That's not the same thing as lying to hurt people. Zix nodded agreement. Friend Jake Morrison, you are still friend Jake Morrison. Hero or farm boy, you are same person inside. Jake felt tears in his eyes. He had expected his friends to be angry or feel betrayed. Instead, they were offering him the same kindness they always had. I don't know what to do, Jake admitted. I don't want to go back to being a symbol or a legend. I just want to be myself. Then be yourself, Lisa said. But be yourself honestly. Stop running from who you are. Before Jake could respond, alarm sirens began wailing across the academy. Emergency lights flashed red, and an announcement echoed from speakers throughout the campus. All cadets report to emergency stations immediately. This is not a drill. Enemy forces have been detected approaching the academy. All cadets report to emergency stations immediately. Jake looked up at the darkening sky and saw ships approaching through the clouds, large angular vessels with the black and red markings of Dominion remnant forces. They had found the academy and they were coming for revenge. The war had followed Jake here after all. The academy shook as the first Dominion missiles hit the outer defense shields. Jake, Lisa, and Zix ran toward the main building with hundreds of other cadets. Emergency lights flashed red against the darkening sky, and the sound of explosions echoed across the campus. In the command center, Academy officers shouted orders while screens showed enemy ships surrounding the facility. Commander Vasquez stood at the main console, her face grim as she watched the tactical display. How many ships? Asked Director Kane, the Academy's commanding officer. 12 Dominion destroyers and at least 30 fighter craft, replied the communications officer. They're demanding we surrender all human personnel for war crimes trials. Jake pushed through the crowd of cadets until he could see the main screen. The Dominion ships hung in the sky like dark clouds, just like they had over Krios 7. His hand started shaking, but this time it wasn't from fear. It was from anger. Our shields are down to 60%, the tactical officer reported. At this rate, they'll break through in 20 minutes. What about reinforcements? Director Kane asked. Nearest Allied fleet is 4 hours away, came the reply. Emergency evacuation ships can be here in 2 hours, but only if we can hold the line. Jake listened to the reports and felt something cold settle in his stomach. The Academy couldn't hold out for 2 hours against 12 destroyers. The cadets would be slaughtered and his friends would die because he had been hiding instead of preparing them for real war. Sir, one of the officers said, the Dominion commander is broadcasting on all frequencies. He says they're looking for the human terrorist who destroyed their forces at Krios 7. They believe he's hiding at this academy. Director Kane looked confused. That's impossible. Jacob Morrison died 5 years ago. Jake closed his eyes. They had come for him. Somehow the Dominion remnants had figured out he was still alive. His secret hadn't just put him at risk. It had brought war to the people he cared about. Commander Vasquez caught his eye across the command center. She nodded once as if she understood what he was thinking. Director Kane, Jake said, stepping forward. I need to speak with you. Not now, Cadet, Director Kane replied without looking at him. We're in the middle of a crisis. The crisis is because of me, Jake said loudly enough for everyone in the command center to hear. I'm Jacob Morrison. I'm the one they're looking for. The command center fell silent except for the sound of alarms and distant explosions. Every officer turned to stare at the quiet human cadet who had just claimed to be a dead war hero. That's impossible, Director Kane said. Jacob Morrison was killed in action. No, sir, Jake replied. He was reported killed in action. There's a difference. Commander Vasquez stepped forward. Director, I can confirm this cadet's identity. He is indeed Sergeant Jacob Morrison, formerly of Delta Squad, 3rd Infantry Division. Director Kane looked back and forth between them. This is insane. You're telling me we've had the hero of Creo 7 enrolled as a cadet for an entire year? Yes, sir, Jake said. And right now that doesn't matter. What matters is that these Dominion ships are here because of me, and I know how to stop them. Another explosion rocked the academy. The shield strength dropped to 40%. How? Director Kane asked. Jake walked to the tactical console and studied the enemy positions. His mind shifted into the same state it had been in during the real battle of Creo 7. Cold, focused, calculating every option. They're making the same mistake they made 5 years ago, Jake said. They're overconfident because they have superior numbers. They think academy cadets can't fight real soldiers. They're right, Director Kane said. These are students, not warriors. No, sir, Jake replied. These are the best tactical minds from dozens of worlds. They just need someone to coordinate them properly. Jake pointed to the display. The Dominion ships are positioned to prevent escape, not to defend against counterattack. If we hit them from 3 directions simultaneously, we can break their formation and create an opening for evacuation ships. With what weapons? The tactical officer asked. Academy defenses are designed for training, not real combat. Jake smiled for the first time in days. With everything we have, training mechs, construction equipment, even the kitchen fabricators can be turned into weapons if you know what you're doing. Director Kane stared at him. You want to fight 12 destroyers with Academy training equipment? I want to buy time for evacuations using Academy training equipment, Jake corrected. Just like I bought time at Creo 7. Another impact shook the building. Shield strength dropped to 20%. Sir, the communications officer said, the Dominion commander is demanding we surrender. Jacob Morrison immediately, or they'll begin bombarding civilian areas. Jake looked around the command center at the faces of officers and cadets from a dozen different worlds. These people had become his family over the past year. He couldn't let them die because of his secrets. Open a channel to the Dominion fleet, Jake said. Cadet Morrison, I don't think. Director Kane began. Sergeant Morrison, Jake corrected firmly. And I'm not asking permission, sir. I'm telling you what needs to happen. The communication screen flickered to life, showing a scarred Dominion commander with hatred in his eyes. I am Commander Vex of the Dominion Liberation Fleet, the alien said. Surrender the human terrorist Jacob Morrison, and we will allow the rest of you to live. Jake stepped in front of the camera. This is Jacob Morrison. I'm right here. Commander Vex's eyes widened with surprise and rage. The ghost of Creo 7, we thought you were dead. I got better, Jake said calmly. Now listen carefully. You have 60 seconds to withdraw your ships from this system, or I'll do to your fleet what I did to your forces 5 years ago. Commander Vex laughed. You're trapped in a school with children. You have no weapons, no soldiers, no hope. I have something better, Jake replied. I have the best tactical minds in the galaxy, and they're all really angry that you interrupted their education. Behind Jake, the command center had erupted into activity. Officers were following his tactical plan, coordinating with cadet teams across the academy. The alien cadets who had studied his battle strategies for months were now implementing them in real time. Zix, take your squad to the engineering bay, Jake called out. Lisa, get your team to the construction yard. Everyone else, you know what to do. On the screen, Commander Vex's expression changed from amusement to concern as he watched Academy personnel moving with military precision. You cannot win, Commander Vex said. We have 12 ships to your one facility. You're right, Jake admitted. We can't win, but we can make you pay such a high price for victory that you'll wish you had never come here. The first Academy counterattack began as modified training mechs emerged from hidden positions around the campus. They weren't military-grade weapons, but in the hands of brilliant alien tactical students, they became deadly threats to the overconfident Dominion forces. All stations report ready, came the announcement from the tactical officer. Jake looked directly into the camera. Commander Vex, my friends here have spent a year studying how I destroyed your forces at Creo 7. Today, they get to practice what they learned. The Academy's improvised weapons opened fire simultaneously from 12 different positions. Training missiles struck enemy fighters while construction lasers cut into destroyer hulls. The Dominion formation, designed to prevent escape rather than defend against attack, crumbled under the coordinated assault. Impossible, Commander Vex said as his tactical display showed multiple ships taking damage. You made the same mistake twice, Jake said. You underestimated your enemies. You thought numbers were more important than tactics. You forgot that sometimes one person willing to stand up can inspire others to be heroes, too. Evacuation ships began arriving as the Dominion fleet found itself fighting for survival against an enemy they had thought helpless. The Academy cadets working together under Jake's coordination proved that intelligence and determination could overcome superior firepower. Commander Vex's ship took a direct hit from a modified mining laser operated by a team of Vortani engineering students. This isn't over, Morrison, he said as his fleet began to retreat. Yes, it is, Jake replied. For you, for the Dominion, and for this war. It's finally over. The Dominion ships limped away into hyperspace, their attempted revenge turned into humiliating defeat. In the command center, cadets and officers cheered as the last enemy vessel disappeared. Jake turned away from the communication screen to find every person in the room staring at him. The quiet farm boy from their classes had just coordinated a brilliant military victory against impossible odds. The room fell silent, Jake thought to himself, remembering all the times he had sat quietly in the back of classrooms while others discussed his legendary battle. Now they knew the truth. The cadet was the human in the war footage all along. Director Kane broke the silence. Sergeant Morrison, I think we need to have a very long conversation about your enrollment status. Jake looked around at his friends and classmates. Zix's skin was bright gold with pride and excitement. Lisa was smiling despite the tears in her eyes. Even the alien cadets who barely knew him were looking at him with respect rather than worship. Yes, sir, Jake said. But first I think we have some damage to repair and some people to take care of.